What makes a man willingly strap on a pack, climb to 17,000 feet in eastern Turkey, and risk everything to uncover history's greatest mysteries? What kind of drive pushes someone to explore ancient ruins, study lost civilizations, and piece together truths hidden in the dust of time? Dr. Aaron Judkins is more than an archaeologist. He's more than an adventurer. He's the embodiment of perseverance, curiosity, and grit. This is a man who just doesn't talk about the past. He walks through it, climbs over it, and digs into it, chasing the stories that others are too afraid or too dismissive to pursue. And by the end of this conversation, I can tell you this. I didn't just interview Dr. Aaron Judkins. I gained a friend. We're cut from the same cloth, bound by the desire to do the hard things, to go where others won't, and to ask the questions no one else dares. So buckle in, because this episode of the Ryan Files is more than just an interview. It's a journey. It's a glimpse into the mind of a man who has been to the edge of the known world and come back with a story to tell. Let's get into it. This is going to be one for the books. Please welcome to the Ryan Files, the one and only, Dr. Aaron Judkins. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Hey, you're welcome. Pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
I dig the hat. It's perfect for our show. I'm a big fan. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones. So, but I've got a really big head, and I can't find a hat to look as good as it looks on you.
Well, this is not the traditional fedora. It's it's just a standard cowboy hat. But yeah, this has been around with me for a long time and traveled around the world with me. And I was out, of course, I live in Texas, and so we got property down here by the Brazos River. And I was out walking around one day and I found this hawk feather on the ground. So it's on this side. So I just picked it up and stuck it in there. So
very cool. Very cool, man. You've been to some of the wildest places on earth. I mean, I was sitting researching you before you came on, and I was like, okay, this dude has been around. I mean, yeah. I see on top of Mount Ararat, with, huffing a bunch of equipment up there looking for the Ark, and just all kinds of stuff. Is there one that sticks out as maybe like the most craziest, or like you're in the middle of it and you're like, man, what have I got myself into? Anything like that?
Eastern Turkey for sure. Mount Ararat. That was the most difficult one I've ever been on. Of course, you're climbing at 17,000 feet up to the summit, and then around to the Eastern Plateau on the Horror Gorge side. Yeah, man, that was difficult. That was the most difficult thing I'd ever done, really, regarding an expedition in my life. That was tough. I trained for that for months and months. I mean, physically trained, and that's not something that I normally enjoy doing. So I hired a trainer. So I was, in Texas for half the month, and I would be back when I was flying. I would be around the Four Corners area, about 7,000 feet for half the month. So I would train at 7,000 feet. And when I come home back to Texas, then I'd have the other half of the month, and I would train with the trainer here. And I'm so glad I did. My legs never bothered me, but it was my lungs. Of course, that's everybody. But I was so glad I had put myself through all that conditioning, because you really need that when you're going to go do something like that. But that was, if you've seen the movie Finding Noah, it came out in theaters in 2015. At the time of its release, it was the largest documentary theatrical release in theaters. Of course, narrated by Gary Sinise. And For King and Country did several songs for us on the film. And it's up on Amazon Prime if you want to see it for free. It's called Finding Noah. But yeah, that was amazing trip. Looking back on it, I'm glad I stuck with it and saw it through. But it was definitely hard.
I can't imagine that necessarily. And it was you guys were in the snow.
Sure.
It was cold. So you're also dealing with that beyond the elevation. I mean, I went down to like Cusco, Peru is elevated some, the Sacsayhuaman and all that, and I trained for that just because I didn't want to be out of breath. I didn't want to not enjoy, being down in Peru. So I had like those elevation masks that you put on. Oh, those are horrible.
Yeah, I actually used one of those at 7,000 feet to increase my altitude. But those are terrible as well. I know what you're talking about.
Horrible training for that. It was too funny too. I just talked to Doug Van Dorn recently, and he's from Colorado, and he's climbed all, according to them, I guess there's 58 Colorado peaks that are above 14,000 feet, and he's climbed all of them, and it's pretty cool. Like it takes something, man. I'll tell you, if you haven't been up that high,
stuff. I was going to climb Pikes Peak at 14,000 for training before I went to Ararat, and they had a big wildfire there that year on the mountain. This would have been, in 2013. And so they had everything closed. I couldn't go there. So I went to Mount Taylor instead, which is about 11,000 feet. But I put on my ice boots, which was a big mistake. And I climbed up to the top of Mount Taylor, 11,000 feet in those ice boots, man. That was the wrong thing to do. I should have just took normal hiking boots, but those ice boots are real stiff, they don't have any flex. And of course you put those on when you get up on the ice. But I did it, and it was a great adventure. It's one of the highlights of my life. It was the hardest thing regarding things that I've done. I've been to Peru the following year, not too long after I got back from Ararat in 2014. Went over to Peru with L.A. Marzulli and Joe Taylor and Chase Kleski and several other people, Richard Shaw. Of course, we've lost Richard now, and we've lost Joe Taylor now. But, it was a great adventure down in Peru. We studied the elongated skulls down there in Paracas, Peru. I specifically wrote a report on 4 of those. And matter of fact, I got some here in my office. You can't see it because it's on the other side of my office, but I've got 4 of them up on that side, and I've got a couple in my on the other side of the wall here on the other side of my office. So you would probably be familiar with cinnamon. That was featured on the History Channel. I think Ancient Aliens. You would be familiar with the little the baby Chongo skull.
Yeah. Yep.
And a couple of others. And I got the Star Child skull. Now these are not the real ones. These are firsthand cast that we made. But they're amazing.
It's very interesting. I've watched a lot of L.A. Marzulli stuff and seen some of these replicas of the skulls without the sagittal suture. And you're basically dealing with something that's, I mean, right? Maybe not human or.
Well, here's the if you go to my website, aaronjudkins.com, you can find a report on those. Also, if you go to Substack and just put in my name, Dr. Aaron Judkins, you'll pull up some reports that I wrote on those 4 particular skulls. Those were field research reports, and we do know that that culture practiced cradle headboarding, and they use 4 different techniques or 4 different ways to cradle headboard. But we're not sure if those are cradle headboarded or not. The theory is that they were not. I didn't come to a conclusion on either way because it's just a preliminary report. The report needs to be that research really needs to be done with some rigorous scientific testing that I didn't have the access to in the field.
Right.
But I left the report open-ended. But you can't rule out some medical conditions called brachiocephaly and things like that. So the report basically shows what we could do in the field, but it doesn't really come to the conclusion. So I left the report open-ended. But to call them Nephilim skulls or alien skulls, academically, for me, I can't do that because I don't have any empirical evidence or data to support that. So, that's not for me to decide. I've did my due diligence on what I had, and that was access to 30 skulls at the museum in Paracas. When Senior Juan was alive, he allowed us to look at all 30 skulls, but they singled out 4 of those skulls in particularly for me to research, and that's what I did. So, and then later on, I was asked to look at the actual Star Child skull when I was in Lubbock with the lady who owns the Star Child skull. And of course, this is the one that Lloyd Pye used, I think, back in the 90s, kind of ran with it, said it was, evidence of an alien.
Right.
But I wrote a report on that skull too. And the Star Child skull is what the informal name that they've named it. And that's what pretty much everybody knows it by. But that skull was born with a congenital medical condition that caused that skull to be that way, and that baby died at a very early age. It's weird looking, but that is an actual congenital condition for that skull. So anyway, so you can find all those reports, including that one, on my website, or you can go to Substack and just type in my name, Dr. Aaron Judkins. It'll come up.
Awesome. Through all this, is there anything, these skulls, rumors of giants, big giant bones, the whole Nephilim thing, all that. Is there any like smoking gun or anything that you've ever seen that makes you kind of say, man, I'm being as scientific as I can here, but this just doesn't, there's something out of whack here? Or is there just never anything that's really made you go, out there?
Well, I mean, we see, several, I would call them circumstantial things, but, here locally we have, some elongated human footprints that has been found in the Paluxy River. Now, I haven't found any long fossilized human footprints that would be classified as a giant human footprint, but there's been cast of some that were taken before I moved to the area. And I have a picture of that in my book that I wrote called Alien Agenda, The Return of the Nephilim. And it's a large track. So if that's authentic, that would indicate, just like the Bible says in Genesis 6, that there were giants in the earth in those days. And they were men of old, men of renown. So we see reports all throughout, of course, the Middle East. But look, there are cases in archaeology that has confirmed the name of Goliath in the archaeological record. I wish I had some, I've got some of these artifacts here in my office that, I don't have readily here, in front of the camera, but one of those, I got one here.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So this one's called the Two Gates inscription.
Okay.
And this Two Gates inscription refers to the name Goliath. You can see the writing on here. This is a very large pottery shard. This is not the real one. This is a replica of the artifact, but this is the way it looked when they found it. It's just a big piece of pottery. Normally, you don't find pottery this large.
Right. Yeah.
But it's called the Two Gates inscription. There's another one. Okay, this is called the Goliath inscription. That is Paleo-Hebrew on a piece of broken pottery. And in Paleo-Hebrew, which is the old form of Hebrew, went out of favor probably around 500 BC. But that was found in modern day, in the area of the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
This is biblical Gath.
Right. That's
okay.
That's one of the places that they didn't kill all of the giants. They fled to Gath and somewhere else. Yeah.
And so this piece of pottery that was discovered in Gaza, and this was, I think, discovered before everything happened when the Palestinians took it over in 2006. And but that was discovered on a dig site, and again, it references the name Goliath. So on my Substack account, if you go to Substack, just the other day and just today, I released 2 articles on giants, and you'll find those pretty interesting, I think, because I reference like the one that just released this morning is called Tracing Giant Legends. And we talk about some of the reports coming out of Ohio and other places that have found large, reports of, large human bones. I've got one over here in the corner that Joe Taylor sculpted. It's a large human femur. And if you've seen Joe standing by the large femur, next to that's that femur bone.
Okay.
I think that femur bone was reportedly found in the 1950s in Egypt by a highway crew. They were, putting in a road. And so there's lots of, that kind of evidence that's out there. But certainly that fits with the biblical narrative. Again, going back to Genesis 6 and the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were also around after the flood. I mean, Numbers 13:33 tells us that the giants were there, and it says also after that.
Yep.
After what? Well, it would be after the flood.
Right. And
now I know some would probably disagree. It's called the 2 incursion theories or whatever. But look, the first incursion happened one way. The second incursion happened a different way. So we know in the book, from the book of Enoch, it's an apocryphal book. It was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It talks about, the 200 watcher angels descending on Mount Hermon. This is at the, this was a spiritual stronghold in that region. And so we see that they made a pact there, and they agreed to do everything. And it the book of Enoch lays out all those details. People have asked me, and I guess I should clarify, but I don't use the book of Enoch as doctrine to live my life out of, or, I think it could provide us some historical insight, but look, I don't think it's scripture inspired, and it's not doctrine. But I do reference it a lot because I think, and because it was, found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think that gives us some authenticity. Now, there's 3 versions of the book of Enoch you should be aware about. I'm not promoting the first or the second book or the third book. I think those were written later, and it's I think they're not good copies at all. I think there were some deliberate changes made into those texts later, but the first book of Enoch is the one I'm referring to. So people would understand that. But yeah, those are things that, I'm really passionate about. I mean, I talk about it in my book, Alien Agenda, The Return of the Nephilim. The subtitle should tell you that the Nephilim are going to return.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to return in the last days, when all this, when the prophecy lines up and towards the Battle of Armageddon. Look, I don't think it's just it's nations coming together, but there's things that are happening way beyond that. We're seeing things loosed out of the bottomless pit. We're seeing those angels that have been bound under the Euphrates River. They get loosed. It says that men would fear so greatly that they would wish to die, but death will not come to them.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of things happening there, but I think part of that may be part of this Nephilim army that's going to return and fight that particular battle. So there's a lot of resources for you there. My book, and if you go to Substack and just read those articles, there's a lot of information right there for you, and it's all footnoted and referenced. That's
awesome, man. I'm going to definitely check that out. It is so funny with aliens, Nephilim. You get this thing that starts connecting the dots. And somewhat loosely. I'm obviously not a scientist like yourself, but I am a Christian, and I do think about these things, and I see the if we're talking about bones, you were talking about bones, this massive femur, which would be a humanoid creature that's however tall, a giant. But we find time and time again these stories of the Smithsonian Institute coming around and scooping everything up, or taking it away for further examination, and all of a sudden it's lost. We see things being pulled out of museums that never are returned. The museum there where Lovelock Cave is. I
was supposed to.
But I feel like maybe, if there is an agenda out there, if there would be an agenda to kind of keep this stuff hidden, that would be the perfect way to do it. Because I think if you talk to a lot of mainstream people and you start talking about giants, they're like, man, you're out of your mind. There was never any giants.
Yeah. If you go to my Patreon account, it's called Ancient Pathways. And on my Patreon account, which is fairly new, but I just recently put up for a digital library. And I have it's called the Book of Giants Library, volumes 1, 2, and 3. And there's about 25 articles and books that references giants in each volume. So volume 1 has 25, volume 2 has 25, and volume 3 is close to 25. It may be a little less, maybe at 20 or 21, but these are all articles and journals and books that I have saved up over the years that is just specifically referencing giants. And I know 2 of those articles are not articles, but 2 of them come from Old Scientific American, like the late 1800s. And these are all available for digital download. It's all a digital library. So if you're interested in that, that's available on the Patreon site called Ancient Pathways. But I'm putting all these resources up and available for people who are interested in these topics, because you can go back and source a lot of the older material. And you have... then I have an article that I wrote, and you have some other things. The one that just went out was, and I've got another one coming out next week that's going to reference the Book of Giants, and I'm going to talk about that in detail. So again, these are all referenced and footnoted, but it definitely is some good resources for you, because I found it interesting for me. And so I had over the years, I had gathered a lot of information. And so I thought, man, that'd be pretty cool if I could, get this digital library up and these ancient documents. And so I've got a wealth of information on all those resources for you if you just want to go and check it out.
I will definitely go check that out. That sounds awesome because it's so hard at times. You feel like almost like the internet's almost been scrubbed of some of this information, um, or things have disappeared. So when you reference something that has disappeared, there's a whole group of people ready to say it was never there in the first place.
Well, what's interesting is that this just recently happened with a colleague of mine who was trying to track down what happened to the Batcrete stone. Every now and then we'll toss things to each other and whatever, and so they were aware that I had of my latest book on Gobekli Tepe called Decoding Gobekli Tepe, Biblical Anatolia and the Watchers. They knew about my previous work at Los Lunas, where I solved the Los Lunas mystery stone. And that was supposedly Paleo-Hebrew, written out in the New Mexico desert, south of Albuquerque, in a village near the village of Los Lunas. And I made multiple trips out there, and I finally figured it out. So that's, again, that's all available on the resources I previously mentioned. You can go and read all that. But that led up to this conversation that I was having with them about the Batcrete stone, because that has Paleo-Hebrew on it as well. And I know there's been some debate on it. I've not really studied it, but I know there's been some debate on the authenticity about it. And who's the guy that did the show on the History Channel at one time? Scott Walter. Scott Walter, I think, took a look at it. American Unearthed, I think, was the name of his show. And I think he said it was credible. He found it authentic. It's a smaller stone, but look, there should be no Paleo-Hebrew over here in the United States, in North America. There should be none of that. And so now the one in New Mexico, there's a movement now that claims that it is the oldest Ten Commandments, and it goes back, thousands of years or whatever. I had a meeting with them. Actually, I told them I don't agree with it. It's no older than 1840. And the dating I would put on it, on that script in New Mexico, would be between 1840 and 1860. And so I lay out the case for all that in the article. But so I was asking, I said, well, look, where did that stone go? And they said, it went to the Smithsonian, but I called and they couldn't locate it. And I said, you got to be kidding. And so this kind of went on, and they finally, someone who's, in charge, I guess, of some of these artifacts and has access to the basement at the Smithsonian, went down to the basement and found it, just stored away in the basement down there. So they are now trying to, my colleague is now trying to get access because they don't think it's authentic. So it's stored. So they're trying to see if they can actually purchase that artifact and at least get it out of the basement. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, it needs to, someone needs to, take another look at this. And I think maybe Scott Walter did a really good job. He's a geologist. And, so I think I would like to see a few more people take a look at it. I would love to take a look at it. But it's just things like stories like that you hear about. This one actually just happened not long ago. But I think there's definitely some truth to it. These artifacts that have been anomalous, that they just do not know what to do with, it gets, if they get a chance to take it, then it's gone. You just don't see it again. So I'm glad that they've tracked that down. I'm hoping that it'll, they'll get ownership of that, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, and think about that. It feels like something's trying to be hidden. Now, maybe that's not the case, but it sure does feel that way. It feels like because if it happens once, okay, so what, it happened once, but man, there's so many of these stories again and again and again, and suddenly just you're like, well, something's going on here. Don't know what it is, but it is interesting that you're finding Paleo Hebrew in Texas. That's
Well, that was in
awesome.
New Mexico.
Or New Mexico. Oh, even crazier. That's wild. I know Doug Van Dorn. He's a pastor. He talked about how, his thoughts were like probably what happened was, people were rising up against these giants, these Nephilim, and kicking them out of the land, and they start moving. They start moving over to Cyprus. They move north up into Gaul, and as soon as you get to Western Ireland, there's nowhere else to go. So you're starting to cross over, and then you're in North America. And we have all the Native American legends, and obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Lovelock Cave, the near Winnemucca, where the Paiute Indians said that there was giant red-haired giants that lived in that cave at Lovelock Cave, and that's pretty interesting. Matter of fact, I talk about that in the article that just came out today about that Lovelock Cave. I was supposed to go out there years ago with my friend Joe Taylor and L.A. Marzulli, but it didn't work out for me with my schedule at the time, so they went out there. And another friend of mine named Pete, Pete actually went into the museum there, I think at Winnemucca, and he talked to the lady there that was running the museum at the time. I probably doubt that she's still there now. She was an older lady. But he asked about the skulls that came out of that cave, and she said, we don't have them on display. And he said, well, where do you have them? She said, they're down in the basement. And he said, look, can I go down there and just look at them and photograph them? She said, yeah, let me take you down there. So she took him down there, and they got to see the skulls. He photographed them, sent them to me. And so I've got those skulls in the article there that came out of the Lovelock Cave. And what Joe Taylor told me was that there was a huge handprint, he thought, I think it was a pictograph on the side of the cave wall, and he said it was huge. He tried to mold that. I'm not quite sure what he did there because I wasn't there, but he said when they went back, I think they made another trip back there. He said that handprint was gone. So
5 fingers, 6 fingers.
Well, I'm trying to recall now, and I actually don't recall. I'd have to ask L.A. Marzulli because it's been, I don't know, but that's interesting. I need to find that out. Actually, I can't talk to Joe anymore since he passed away. But L.A. Marzulli might remember. Next time I talk to him, I'll ask him. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I followed L.A.'s work quite a bit. He's a pretty interesting fellow himself. Yeah. But man, so you've been all over the world here. You definitely have your knowledge when it comes to giants, no doubt about it. But I mean, I know faith is a weird thing in the scientific realm. Do you have faith that you're actually looking at these stories are real, that there were definitely giants? I mean, like not just one case of, Andre the Giant having gigantism or something, but this Nephilim thing, giants in the land, was a real thing, and it existed after the flood, and we're seeing evidence of it all over the world. Is that something you believe?
Yeah. I do believe that. One, because I believe the Bible, and I believe both the Old Testament and the New Testament. So let's take the example of Noah's Ark. Someone asked me, well, why would you go find Noah's Ark? I mean, why would you go do that? Well, because the Bible has, give us the information that the Ark was built. And, someone has to take up the challenge to go look for it. If there's been, if a superstructure is being spotted on Greater Ararat, from ancient sightings all the way up to modern day sightings, including, Colonel Jim Irwin, who was our Apollo astronaut, spent the rest of his life when he retired out of the military and NASA to go search for Noah's Ark in eastern Turkey. And he nearly died on one of those climbs. He fell and they couldn't get to him. He overnighted exposed on this cliff on the rock face. And I mean, he came close to death, but yeah, I believe it because the Bible has said it. And look, it doesn't change my faith either way if we find it or if we don't find it. I don't need it for my faith. So if we find Noah's Ark, great. It's not required. I don't need it. If we find more evidence of giants, that's awesome. Like the Gath inscription here with Goliath's name in Paleo Hebrew. It's called the Gath inscription. Well, that's great, but I don't need that artifact to believe the Bible. So the Bible has a lot of confirming evidence in both the Old Testament and the New Testament as well, of people, places, events, times, cities, names, battles. Even extra biblical evidence found outside the Bible has confirmed a lot of these things. So to me, I don't need any of that. But look, when we find it as an archaeologist, I get excited because that's empirical evidence. That's, what we call evidential apologetics. And you can take evidence like that and you can just present it to people that may not know. And to them, I think it would be helpful for them if they're on the fence to know that the Bible is indeed true. So yes, I have faith for sure about it, but I do think that the Nephilim existed, and there's there's been all the circumstantial evidence for them around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man. And that's awesome to hear. Faith is an amazing thing. The Bible's an amazing thing. And I love that there are people like yourselves and so many others that we talk to who we're not interested in this to prove the Bible. We believe the Bible's already proven, but it's exciting when you see stuff that is always continuing to just back up what the Bible says. And yeah. I love it. It confirms the Bible. We're not out to prove the Bible, but there's evidence that confirms the biblical text, and that's what's exciting. So the Nephilim, is a part of that biblical story, and look, there was a specific reason why and how those creatures came into being and came here. But look, these Nephilim creatures were evil in nature. And we see that they were, 2/3 man, but 1/3 God. And now you have the legends coming down out throughout history of the Greek Titans. And, we hear of Apollo and, a lot of these other, gods that I think had a basis, at least a grain of truth, going back to the giants of the Nephilim. Yeah. Derek Gilbert has done some really great work and research in that area. If you're not familiar with him or you haven't read his books, you need to go check out Derek Gilbert. And he's did some amazing research on the Titans and how those go back to the original concepts in the Old Testament about the Nephilim and the giants. So this all comes together. I think when you take a look at it, I think it all comes together in the Old Testament. Yeah, for sure. And you spent a lot of time over in that area of the world where you've been around and you've seen places, from the Bible, artifacts or places like I think I saw the other day when you were at Petra. It's incredible. Like it has to be incredible to be over there and to see these things firsthand. Things that were
I've
actually
been to Petra
mentioned.
3 times.
It's incredible.
Yeah, we made a film called Qumran to Petra, Qumran 2, the number 2, Qumran to Petra. It's about a 90-minute film. It's for, I think I have it up on my Ancient Pathways Patreon site.
All right.
But yeah, we basically, a filmmaker named Ty Towers and I teamed up, and we go from Qumran, where I was excavating on the Qumran Plateau with Dr. Randall Price back in 2017, incidentally discovering we discovered the 12th Dead Sea Scroll Cave. And then we take you from there, from the last day on that dig, and then we go into Jordan, and we take you into Wadi Rum and Wadi Musa. So it's quite fantastic. I would love to go back to both places, but I would love to go back to Wadi Musa and overnight in the desert with the Bedouins there. They've invited me back. I've overnighted in the desert in Israel with the Bedouins back in 2004, and that was really an amazing experience. But I'd love to go back and do that with them. And this is, of course, where Lawrence of Arabia came through that area, and then we see that the children of Israel came when they were coming out of the Exodus. They went through this area, went up through the King's Highway on the way to the land. So it's an amazing place, but it's got some fantastic landscapes. I mean, that it's this red sandstone sand. Of course, they filmed Matt Damon went there and filmed the movie The Martian.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and they didn't really have to do a lot. I don't even think they had to filter anything really. It was just use the landscape like it was.
It's incredible. Incredible. Yeah, you showed a couple. I was watching. I saw a couple photos or video, and I'm like, well, yeah, that looks exactly like. And it was red. I didn't know if there was a filter on that or not, but apparently not.
I don't think so. No,
Wow.
I didn't use a filter when we were there. It's just natural landscape, and it's beautiful. But if you're out there, you're not a Bedouin, man. You're not going to make it, because there are specific water sources, and otherwise it's just desert. It gets very cold at night, very hot during the day. Yeah, you'll see. We take you through that in that film called Qumran to Petra. We take you through all that, let you experience the journey with us. And so just over the years, just the things that I've done, I've tried to film. I had Ty with me on that trip, so he was able to do all the filming and everything. I didn't have to do a lot there, but a lot of these other things, man, I had to film a lot just myself. When I was down in Peru with L.A. Marzulli, I just did a lot of filming, just holding the camera up, talking. I did that with when I was going up Ararat with my GoPro. That footage was for me. It was ended up getting used in the film, which I wasn't aware that was going to happen, but it did. Yeah, so it's fantastic. So I just try to gather as much information, whether it's film or documents, and put them together, in articles or whatever. But I try to put all this information together in one spot for people to see, or a couple of different resources for people to go see that want to follow my work. So that's years and years of doing all this, and now I've accumulated a lot of this information. I'm just trying to share it with others that are interested.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Listen, if you ever need someone to just be, there and film, do all the filming, all that multi-camera stuff out, just give me a ring. I'll
do you do that? Are you a film guy?
Yeah, a little bit. Kind of an expert when it comes to just being like rogue, not having the resources to have multi-million-dollar cameras and all this stuff, but being out, and it's different filming whenever you're somewhere on a trail or in the middle of a desert or on the side of a mountain or whatever.
Yeah.
So you gotta know what you're doing. So that's pretty cool. One final thing, you mentioned you mentioned Göbekli Tepe recently, and you wrote a book about it. There's so many different thoughts about this place that, apparently was buried, perhaps intentionally, I guess, and now we're discovering it, and we're discovering, man, it's really, really old, and it could mean this, it could mean that. Just in a nutshell, I mean, what's your thoughts about it and your experiences there, and what do you think it represents, if anything at all? This is up in Turkey, correct?
Yeah, southeast Turkey. Yeah. I've got, this is my book that I wrote on. It's called Decoding Gobekli Tepe, Biblical Anatolian the Watchers. I co-authored it with Dr. Judd Burton. This is new. It just came out just a few months ago. It trended #1 on Amazon for new release in archaeology, #1 in new release in prehistory, and #1 in new release in ancient knowledge, I think. But this book is the first book written from a biblical Christian perspective on Gobekli Tepe.
Awesome.
And we're proposing several new theories about Gobekli Tepe. One is called the regeneration theory. And another one is I'm introducing a alluvian Anatolian hieroglyphic linguistic theory. But I think we're pretty close to understanding at least more what the functionality of Gobekli Tepe was. This is all new information. It's taken us 5 years of research to put all this together. For people who have an interest in Gobekli Tepe, from a biblical perspective, where do you put Gobekli Tepe? Who were the people there? What were they doing? Why were they there? And so we try to answer, as much of these questions as we can, and we think we've come to a very plausible and reasonable theory about what they were doing, at least in Enclosure D at Gobekli Tepe. And so this Enclosure D is the one that took about 10 years to excavate. It has the two 18.5-foot tall anthropomorphic T-pillar centrally located in Enclosure D. Anthropomorphic means they're human-like, no faces, but they have arms wrapping around in the navel. They're wearing a belt with the fox pelt loincloth. They're wearing a stola around the neck. Now, again, no face, but on Western Pillar 31, it has an image of a bull cranium, which is a bull with horns. On Eastern Pillar 18, it has another couple of images. One is a crescent moon. Above that is a brown disk, which I think it may be the full moon. It could be the sun. And then above that is what we would think is an English H. It's not an English H, but it looks like that. But there's something in particularly related to the Anatolian hieroglyphics that I make in the book, and that is that there's alluvian logograms written on the stones of Gobekli Tepe, which is language. These are not simple art motifs. It's language, I think, on the stones. And it's specifically language that was misclassified in the 1800s as hieroglyphic Hittite, but they realized that they misclassified it, I think, in the 1930s, and they realized it's Anatolian hieroglyphics. But these are alluvian logograms. A logogram is a letter, or it's not a letter. It's a concept or word, or I'm trying to put it in the best way I can. It's a hieroglyphic symbol that represents a word. Right. So the symbol represents an idea or a complete word behind that. So in this case, the H looking thing that I was talking about is all over Gobekli Tepe. That's alluvian logogram. When you translate it into Latin, the transliteration is portal or gate in Luwian logograms. Now, not all the logograms have been deciphered. There's hundreds that have not been, and this particular language is not well understood yet because the Luwian culture has not been that well studied. It was contemporaneous with the Hittites, but we do know that the Hittites adopted this Anatolian hieroglyphics into their culture, and we see that both of them used Luwian logograms specifically for writing on monumental stone for religious purposes. And this is exactly what we see at Göbekli Tepe. This is not an isolated find. In 1943, Luwian logograms were discovered at Kara Tepe. Now, that's not to be confused with Karahan Tepe, but Luwian logograms were discovered at a site called Kara Tepe in 1943. So I think this is a very interesting new theory that we're putting forth about the site. But look, it'll blow your mind. If you really have an interest in history or biblical history or ancient Anatolia or Göbekli Tepe, you need to read this book because it will blow your mind what we've discovered here. And as I said, it's reasonable, I think, theories that we're putting forth. We're not saying we're 100% correct. We're saying we're putting forth these new theories, and I think the scholarship eventually will bear out that, at least in my hopes, that these theories are going to, play out into understanding Göbekli Tepe fuller in the future.
I am excited about this. I did not know that you had the book, so I am definitely going to get everything that you talked about. I just realized having you on the Ryan Files this week, you just increased my reading list for a number of months. So, and I'm familiar with Dr. Judd Burton too. Pretty awesome stuff there as well. So yeah. I'm excited to read that, man. Brother, you have lived a life.
Well, I'm in my early 50s, and some of the people that I've looked up to that or maybe have passed on, or let's take Joe Taylor for instance. Joe Taylor lived 3 lives, and what I mean by that is he had 3 distinct chapters in his life, but they were all distinct. But if most people live just out one life and that's it, they don't really do a lot with it.
Right.
Joe lived out 3 distinct chapters in his life, and some of the I think people that have accomplished really great things in life, at least there's a commonality, there's a thread there that they've had 3 distinct phases in their life that they've really accomplished. In each one of those phases of their life, they've done something extraordinary. And so, I'm kind of looking in my 3rd chapter here with my archaeology work and going forward in that. But, I've done other things in life. I mean, I've had my first passion is music. My second passion is the medical field. Not necessarily in order, but and my third passion is archaeology, and particularly biblical archaeology. And I've been blessed to be able to do all 3 of these passions in one way or another. And but I've had 2 distinct phases in my life where I was able to do some things, and I had a full career as a flight medic on a 911 helicopter. I did that for a number of years. I served my local community on the fire department as a firefighter paramedic for a decade. I did that basically for free. I would go do 24-hour shifts, and the last 4 years they put me on the reserve. But look, I didn't get paid for a lot of that. I would get up and go run calls on the ambulance in my county. And then then when our fire department grew, then, we had a place where we stayed at the station, and now that's a full-time paid professional fire department. But I've been able to do quite a bit in my life, and but it's really, whatever you're doing in life, just if you have a passion for it, it's going to show, and you just do it. And so I've had times and opportunities where I've been able to go do these things. I've not been able to go do a lot of things that I still want to do. There's still a lot that I can't do because of there's always a schedule constraint because of my medical work that basically funds a lot of the things that I do. I just can't, I don't have any source of funding where I can just go and take off. So that leads into a time constraint. So, financial constraints, time constraints are always an issue for me. But look, I go out and just do what I can, when I'm able to. And I just told myself years ago that I don't want to be laying on the couch, which I don't lay on the couch. But it's I guess a rhetorical phrase, but I don't want to be looking back on my life when I'm near the end and thinking, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have climbed Mount Ararat because I had the chance and I didn't go. I did go. Now, there was times where I wanted to give up and turn around and go back down, and I was pretty close at one point. I just don't want to look back on my life and say, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have taken this opportunity and done that. So I've learned, man, if I can, if it's possible, some of these things, I didn't see a way to go to Turkey. I mean, I got invited. I didn't really see a way to go. And, it happened. And there's another story in itself, but I could be busy. I can just put it this way. I can be busy full time doing this work and never run out of anything to do. I mean, that would keep me busy for the rest of my life, but I just really enjoy it. And I really enjoy getting, to present these new ideas to folks who maybe don't have a clarification on it, like Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe is a really great example of this. Again, if you haven't read the book, you need to go and read it if you have an interest in this. And what we're asking folks is, look, if you enjoyed the book or you've learned from it, follow the references and the footnotes in the book, because that's the breadth and depth of the book. You'll get a whole education just at reading the footnotes and the bibliography in the back. But we're asking folks to go over to Amazon and give us a good review on Amazon, because that helps the book on Amazon, trend on Amazon. But we're just excited, man, to finally get the book out and get this information out, and we're hoping that it will give some answers for some folks about what this site is, because a lot of things that you've heard about Göbekli Tepe are from a secular point of view. This book will bring it in a biblical perspective for you for the first time.
That is awesome, man. Dude, I'm jacked up. This is your story, Aaron, is so, we're cut from the same cloth in so many ways. Sometime maybe we'll sit down and talk about that. But your story and my story are very similar. And man, and I'm here today doing this just because it's kind of a third chapter in my life that I want. I can't not do this. Yeah. And it's been crazy. It's been such a weird thing that came out of nowhere that I'm not really even good at, but man, I know I'm called to do it. I know I'm supposed to be here for some reason. And
well, and that's great when you have that kind of opportunity and passion, go for it. And look, I hosted my own radio show called Epic Voyages Radio for 3 years or so. And I enjoyed doing that. We took live callers. I had a producer. It went out live out of Chicago on terrestrial FM radio. And then we podcasted it. And it was a great time in my life. But getting information out to people is important. And so I would bring on guests and things, and we'd take callers, and it was a lot of fun. But I think what you're doing, Ryan, is getting information out to folks who is not going to see it on a mainstream channel. And that's why I think the nature of media is changing. That's why Joe Rogan's podcast is number one, because he takes 2 or 3 hours and he actually has a conversation with people that you're not going to hear in a 5-minute clip on the news or any mainstream. You don't really know what they think or hear. You hear these viral clips, but that's it. You really, in that 2 or 3 hours, you really get to hear the people just talk. And what do you think about this? And it's not about winning an argument. It's about letting that person discuss their viewpoint, and I think that's fantastic. So like Elon Musk said, we are the media now, and so it's formats like this that I think are great to let people get information out and let them decide what content they want to watch. But if they have any interest in the biblical aspect of history or giants, the Nephilim, Göbekli Tepe, man, I've been all over this and for a long time. But we're really excited to get this new book out on decoding Göbekli Tepe.
I'll tell you what, we'll definitely do a lot on this end to make sure our listeners are getting on Amazon, getting the book, positive reviews, all of that for sure. And all the other stuff too. I'm gonna take a second because I'm kind of, it's a journey. This podcast is kind of a journey. I do a lot of research on things on my own, but there's a lot of people that listen to the Ryan Files that aren't familiar with it. So I'm so thankful for people like yourself being able to bring them on, and we're all kind of getting caught up to speed together. And I feel like once we do, man, we're really going to be able to dive into some of this stuff a little bit deeper. Yeah, for sure. And part of that is getting educated through the work that people like yourself have done. And so that's exciting. And reading books is, I love it. I love it because it's just, there's nothing like learning, and there's so much out there to be absorbed. There's just not enough hours in the day.
This book on Gobekli Tepe is not just about Gobekli Tepe. You're going to learn about the Ice Age. You're going to learn about the flood. You're going to learn about, you're going to learn about what happened during that time period and why it happened. You're going to learn about, you'll learn about what it means today for us. In the appendix, I bring it forward to present day. And if you've read Jonathan Cahn's book on Return of the Gods, okay, I met Jonathan Cahn a number of years ago. I gave him a book, my Alien Agenda book, The Return of the Nephilim. I gave him a copy of that, and I had to buy his book, so it didn't work out in my favor, but he got a copy of my book. But look, that book he wrote called Return of the Gods is amazing. And if you like that book, Decoding Gobekli Tepe is one you need to read, because it comes right alongside Jonathan Cahn's Return of the Gods book. And in that appendix in our book, it brings it home on what's happening today. And if I'm sure the majority of people have not heard about some of these accounts that I write about in the appendix, but it all ties back to the very beginning. We know that Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun, and it all ties back to the beginning. So what's happened then, it maybe is happening now in a different way. But look, it's the policy of evil that is still pervading, and it's waxing worse. Even Paul said in his time that the spirit of the Antichrist was at play to thwart the very beginnings of the church, the very beginnings of the church. This is nothing new. This is why the giants were in the land. The Nephilim came down. It was a spiritual stronghold on Mount Hermon, or Mount Hermon, however you want to say it. This is where Dr. Judd Burton writes about in his book, about where Jesus takes his disciples to the cave of Pan at the foot of Mount Hermon. This is an enemy territory. Yeah. He takes them to Caesarea Philippi at the cave of Pan, and he asked Peter, who do you say that I am? And he makes a declaration right there in enemy territory that I'm taking all this back. I'm taking all this back. And the disciples didn't even understand it. They had no understanding of that he was going to be crucified and resurrected in 3 days. And Jesus is telling them, and what does Peter say? Oh, far be it from you, Lord. But the Lord rebukes him. But it's not, he didn't rebuke Peter. He rebuked the spirit behind Peter. So this is if you peel back the layer, you'll see a supernatural, what Mike Heiser said, the unseen realm. Mike Heiser, before he died, he asked Dr. Judd Burton and I to carry on his show, Fringe Pop 321. And because of Dr. Burton's health, he's not been able physically to get to the studio, but I started back up the show a number of months ago called Fringe Pop 321. A lot of Dr. Michael Heiser's fans will know about this show. But look, the only reason I'm doing that show is because Dr. Heiser asked us to carry on that work. And I know that there's been some people who have made some pretty nasty comments that about it. But look, they didn't know that. And so I'm just making that public now that that's not something that I even wanted to do. I said no back when Dr. Heiser asked me to come on the show to talk about the work that Judd and I were doing years ago. I didn't want to do it because I just, I'm going on with Dr. Heiser. I can't, that's, I had second thoughts about it, and I ended up going on the show. We did 6 programs. Those were his last 6 programs he ever filmed.
Wow.
Because right after that, he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and then we lost him. Yeah. So sometimes you just got to say yes, But it's been a great journey, and so all this ties into to what's happening. But that'll blow you away when you actually. I think chapter 9, chapter 10 will definitely blow you away. The appendix. It'll all come together for you, and I think you'll have a clear understanding about Göbekli Tepe and why it matters to the person, just the normal everyday person today.
I can't wait. This is awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I emailed you before you came on, and I said, eventually we're going to talk about maybe giants, but man, I started looking in. You've just done so much, and here we are ending on something that is, man, I'm going to read the book. I would love to maybe get back with you at some point. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate this time that you've given, but, and I'm going to get this out to all the people that are listening. How else can they get in touch with you, follow you, stay informed about this stuff? You got social media? What is it? Yeah.
So my website's aaronjudkins.com. It's AARONJUDKINS, aaronjudkins.com. If you go to my Substack, just put in Dr. Aaron Judkins, that'll pull up. I have a lot of free content on there. Some of the longer detailed articles are going to be for membership subscription. But look, I put a lot of time and effort into writing those, and it'll be a really great asset for your reference library and just for your knowledge. Things like giants and things like that. And then if you go over to my Patreon site, which is called Ancient Pathways, I have a lot of free content there. But like for a cup of coffee a month, you'll get access to a lot of member-only exclusive content. And you'll get access to the digital library, the Book of Giants, volumes 1, 2, and 3. I have another one called the Archival History Documents, which is just random historical documents that I think people would find interesting. The Book of Enoch that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've got the Septuagint of the Old Testament. You'll have the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English in PDF, plus a number of other documents that are, it's just all right there at your fingertips. Films, things to watch. Qumran to Petra I talked about. A number of other videos and content that are up there. So those are the 3 main places. If you want to go over to Facebook, it's just Man versus Archaeology. on Facebook, and you can follow me there. I don't have Instagram or any other social media, but that may be changing in the near future. I'm not sure, but those are the three ways to really get a hold of me.
And I cannot thank you enough. And for everybody listening, we're going to be talking about this on the Friday night mic drops and everything else. This has been an incredible episode with a wealth of knowledge. And, sometimes you go do something and you're expecting it to be great. And then all of a sudden you realize it's better than you ever could have imagined. And that is having you on today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have him back at some point. The one and only Dr. Aaron Judkins. Thank you, sir. There are people you meet in life who leave a mark on you, not because of what they do, but because of who they are. Dr. Aaron Judkins is one of those people. He doesn't just study history, he walks its paths, faces its challenges, and embraces its mysteries with a depth few can match. And if there's one thing I respect most about him, it's not just about his discoveries, his books, or his expeditions. It's his heart. His commitment to doing the hard things, not for fame, not for fortune, but because it's the right thing to do and because he can do it. So, if this episode spoke to you and you want to dig deeper into the truth about ancient history, the Nephilim, and the mysteries of Göbekli Tepe, you need to check out Dr. Judkins' book, Decoding Gobekli Tepe. I've had it for a few days and I'm almost finished with it. It's not just another take. It's groundbreaking, bold, and it's going to challenge the way you see the past. And speaking of books, the Ryan Files is launching something brand new, the Deep Dive Book Club. This is where we're going to go beyond the surface, tackling books that challenge the status quo and open up the hidden corners of history, science, and the unknown. And what a better way to kick it off than with Decoding Gobekli Tepe. This is our first pick, so grab your copy today, start reading, and stay tuned for a deep dive discussion where we're going to break it all down together. And while you're at it, make sure you like this video if you in fact liked it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel and head over to theryanfiles.com to support this show. Become an agent on Patreon or become a channel member right here on YouTube. Either way, you really help us keep having these conversations that the mainstream media just won't touch. Thank you. Dr. Aaron Judkins is the real deal. And I hope after this, you see that too. You folks are awesome. Be amazing, be positive, and stay curious out there, my friends. And I'll see you right here next week on The Ryan Files.
Are you not curious?
Preparing to transfer the Ryan Files. Now.
I present to you, with great intrigue and wonder, the Ryan